It started with a lie, one coated in pity and decorated with good intentions. "She's just a foster kid," Chloe, my husband, Nathan, had said. 16. Her home situation is complicated. I couldn't leave her to the system. I stared at the girl standing awkwardly in my living room, her backpack slung low on one shoulder, her expression unreadable. Pale, slim, with ocean-dark eyes and a mouth that looked like it hadn't smiled in years. But something about her was familiar. "What's her name?" I asked. "Marissa," Nathan answered a little too quickly. "No last name. No caseworker visit. No paperwork. Just a girl and a suitcase, and a husband I thought I knew." I should have trusted my gut. But instead, I forced a smile and said, "Well, welcome home, Marissa." She nodded once, slowly. Then scanned the house like she was memorizing the layout. My son, Caleb, 13 and forever curious, tried to welcome her. She barely looked at him. That night, Nathan insisted we prepare the guest room. I watched from the doorway as he fluffed pillows, arranged blankets, and asked Marissa if she liked spaghetti or not. He was eager. Too eager. That was the first red flag. The second came a few days later when I caught her in our bedroom, going through my dresser drawers. "I was looking for a charger," she said flatly. The third? The way she looked at me. Like I was the outsider. Like I didn't belong in my own home. I was doing laundry when I heard her voice. Marissa had been on her phone for over an hour in her room with the door cracked open. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I was simply walking by, until I heard her laugh. Cold. Sharp. Like shattered glass. "I told you, Mom. She's pathetic. She thinks I'm some poor abandoned orphan. Honestly, it's laughable." I froze. Her mother, my blood ran cold. Then her voice dropped, darker, deadlier. "I'll ruin her. Her marriage, her house, her brat. I'll watch her life burn, and then I'll dance in the ashes with Dad. Dad. Dad." The word echoed in my skull like a gunshot. I stumbled back, nearly dropping the laundry basket. My mouth went dry. My legs turned to lead. And still, she kept talking. "He doesn't love her. He never did. It was always about you, Mom. He's just playing nice to keep things quiet until we're ready." I barely made it back to the laundry room without collapsing. Nathan. He brought his affair child into our home. Lied about her. Made me welcome her. Made our son share his space with her. And she, this girl, was plotting to destroy everything I'd built. With him. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Then, slowly, something settled in my chest. Not grief. Not heartbreak. Fire. Burning, righteous rage. They wanted to burn my life, fine. But I'd make sure they were the ones choking on the smoke. The night after I heard that phone call, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed beside Nathan, staring at the ceiling while his breathing remained steady and oblivious. His arm was draped over me like nothing had changed, like the knife he had twisted into my back didn't exist. He had no idea I knew. And that was going to be my advantage. The next morning, I kept up the act. Smiles at breakfast. Light jokes with Caleb. I even packed lunch for Marissa like she wasn't plotting to ruin my life. She took it without a word, her expression blank. But I saw the flicker in her eyes, like she knew I was cracking. What she didn't know, I break into silence before I explode into storms. That day, while they were all out, I did what any betrayed wife would do when pushed to the edge. I searched. Through Nathan's office drawers, his laptop history, his hidden USB drive in the false bottom box. He always underestimated me, thought I wasn't tech-savvy. I found an entire folder labeled M. Photos of her growing up. Emails between him and her mother. Bank statements, monthly payments disguised as foster donations. One email, dated 2 weeks before Marissa moved in, sealed it all. It's time, Nathan. She's 16. She knows everything. Let her in, or she'll tell Chloe anyway. You've had your perfect family long enough. So that was it. The affair. The child. The threat. And now this full-blown invasion of my life. I sat there, hands trembling, bile rising. I wanted to scream. But I didn't. Instead, I made copies. Screenshots. Prints. I started a digital file and backed it up on a cloud Nathan didn't know about. He wanted secrets, now I had mine too. The first thing I did was remove my name from all shared accounts and cards. Quietly. Methodically. I created new bank accounts under my name only. Moved my salary and savings. I got in touch with a lawyer, quietly, privately, explaining I was just exploring options. I didn't tell them everything, not yet. But I asked all the right questions. Then I visited Caleb's school and adjusted the emergency contacts. I gave them a photo of Marissa and said she was never to pick him up under any circumstance. They looked confused, but didn't ask questions. I started collecting everything, texts from Nathan, every time Marissa was cruel when no one was looking, every time Nathan gaslit me into thinking I was overreacting. And all the while, I played the perfect wife. Dinner ready. Calendar up to date. Thank you, honey, with a kiss on the cheek. Because they expected a breakdown. What they were getting was a takedown. It was Marissa who slipped first. She grew cocky, careless. Started leaving her phone lying around. Started mocking Caleb in ways that pushed even his calm little heart to tears. One day, I found her in the kitchen deliberately burning his drawings he'd stuck to the fridge. When I confronted her, she smiled and said, "Oops. Guess I thought they were trash." I looked her dead in the eye and said nothing. Just smiled. Let her think I was still weak. Because Marissa thought this was a game. But she forgot, she was standing in a house I built, with a man who barely knew the woman I was becoming. And soon, she'd learn I wasn't the victim. I was the reckoning. A week passed. And in that week, the house felt like a battleground. Nathan, oblivious to everything, continued to throw his charm around like a blanket, wrapping it tightly around Marissa, convincing himself she was just a troubled kid. I had no idea what he saw in her. She was a manipulative, cold-hearted teenager, and he was falling for it. Or maybe I was wrong about him. Maybe he wasn't even falling anymore. Maybe he was too deep to see it. But I wasn't going to wait around to figure it out. I knew I had to act. I gave Caleb the talk. "Mom's got a plan," I said to him one evening when Nathan had gone out to run errands. "It's just us for now, okay?" He nodded, his forehead furrowing in confusion. He was still too young to fully grasp what was happening, but he knew enough to sense the tension in the air. "You don't need to worry. Just trust me," I said, taking his small hands into mine. "This will be over soon." When Nathan came back later that night, he asked why Caleb wasn't sitting at the dinner table. "He wanted some alone time," I said coolly. "He's had a rough week with school." He didn't question me, his mind elsewhere. That was the perfect opportunity. I slipped into action. That night, I started putting together my final play. I reached out to my lawyer again, detailing everything that had happened so far. It was time to let the professionals handle the official stuff. I called Marissa's school the next day and arranged a meeting with her guidance counselor. She had been playing the victim too long, and I needed to make sure someone was watching her. Someone who would see through her lies. And the school was a great place to start planting the seeds of doubt in their minds. I sent a few anonymous tips about her behavior in the classroom and her troubled relationship with her father. The storm was coming. I could feel it in the pit of my stomach. But I wasn't afraid. I was finally ready. It was late Friday afternoon when I made the first move. Nathan had been unusually distant, his eyes clouded with guilt every time I looked at him. He knew something was off. Maybe he sensed that I was no longer the woman who would just sit quietly and take it. Or maybe he just realized that he had been lying to me for too long. Either way, he couldn't hide it anymore. Marissa was in her room, locked away behind the door she had kept shut for the past few days, likely plotting her next move. But I had my own plans for her. I walked into the living room, where Nathan was sprawled on the couch, watching a game he barely seemed interested in. He barely looked up when I sat beside him. "Chloe," he said absent-mindedly. "We should talk." "I think we should," I replied, my voice colder than I intended. "I know I've been distant lately," he started, sitting up straight. "But you have to understand. She's family." "Family?" I almost laughed. "Is that what you're calling her now?" He looked at me, confused. "You brought your affair child into our home under the pretense of fostering her." "Nathan. But she's not here because you care about her. She's here because you're still in love with your mistake." Nathan went pale. "Chloe, that's not true, don't lie to me," I cut him off, slamming my hand on the coffee table. "I know everything." I showed him the printed emails. The photos of Marissa, the bank transfers, the lies he had been living. The truth spilled out, ugly and undeniable. I thought he would defend himself. I thought he would fight. Instead, he sat there in silence, the color draining from his face. His mouth opened, but no words came out. "You're disgusting," I whispered, rising from my seat. "And I won't sit here and let you destroy me. Or Caleb. Or this family." That was the turning point. Nathan's confession was as pathetic as his actions. But what really crushed him was when I pulled out my phone and showed him the final piece of the puzzle, the recording of Marissa's phone call to her mother. "I'll destroy her," Marissa had said. "And then I'll enjoy the ashes with my dad." That was all it took. Nathan's face twisted in shock. "You've been recording her?" His voice cracked. "I've been protecting myself," I said coldly. "And now I'm done protecting you." The moment Nathan saw the damning proof, the emails, the recordings, the bank statements, he crumpled. I had known he would. He wasn't strong enough to fight for his own marriage, let alone his dignity. But I was done. I had been done the moment I overheard Marissa plotting with her mother to destroy everything I'd worked for. They wanted to burn my life? Fine. Let them try. "You're pathetic, Nathan," I said, my voice steady but venomous. "Everything you've built is a house of lies. A game. And I'm the one who was stupid enough to play along." I wasn't interested in his apologies or explanations. He had been a coward, hiding behind Marissa and her mother. It wasn't just about an affair anymore. It was about everything he had taken from me, everything I had built on my own. My life, my home, my son. And he was about to lose it all. I stood up, walked over to the door, and turned the lock. Marissa had been in her room, but I had no doubt she was listening. After all, it was her who was the puppet master behind this whole charade. She wanted to destroy me, but she was about to see the real power of the woman she underestimated. "Chloe. Please." Nathan's voice cracked. "Let's talk. We can fix this." "You can fix nothing, Nathan," I replied, stepping toward him. "Get your things. You and Marissa are leaving." His eyes widened in disbelief. "What?" "Chloe, don't do this. She's a kid, she doesn't understand, I don't care about her," I snapped. "She's your problem. And you are no longer my problem. Both of you are leaving. I don't care where you go, but I won't be your doormat anymore." I grabbed my phone, sending a quick text to Caleb's school to let them know he would be staying with me, and made the necessary arrangements to get him into a friend's care for the weekend. No matter what happened, I wasn't going to let them have the satisfaction of knowing they had torn apart our family. Nathan's face crumbled. Chloe. Please don't do this. She's my daughter. I don't care, I said, my voice unwavering. I've spent enough time cleaning up your messes. The next few hours felt like an eternity. Nathan, stunned and silent, packed a bag with no fight left in him. His eyes never met mine. He couldn't, because deep down, he knew I was right. He had spent years betraying me, lying to me, and thinking I wouldn't notice. But I had seen it all. And now, I was the one in control. Marissa didn't come out of her room, not even when I knocked on her door. I could hear the faint sound of her phone ringing, but I wasn't interested in whether she was trying to reach her mother. She wasn't going to escape this. They were both dead to me. I knew she would be furious when I kicked them out. I knew she would call her mother and tell her how unfair I was being. But that was fine. Let them tell their story. Because I had already made sure I wasn't alone in this. Just as Nathan and Marissa were ready to leave, I handed them one last document, a legal notice that I had prepared with my lawyer's help, detailing the termination of their stay and the immediate consequences if they attempted to contact me or Caleb again. You're not welcome here anymore, I said, as cold as I could manage. Nathan looked at me with pleading eyes, but there was nothing left to say. I was no longer the woman who had stood by him for years. I was someone else now, someone who would not allow their lies to define me. Take it and go, I said, my tone final. And just like that, they were gone. The silence that followed was deafening. But it wasn't over yet. As soon as I saw them leave the house, I didn't waste a second. I made a phone call to my lawyer, ensuring everything was in place for the next phase. Nathan had betrayed me in the worst way possible, and I wasn't going to let him walk away unscathed. I had already called Caleb's school and cancelled any joint financial accounts linked to Nathan. And now it was time for the final act. I sent an anonymous email to every important contact in Nathan's business network, every person he thought would help him rebuild his life. It wasn't a threat, it was the truth. The truth about the affair, the fraud, the stolen trust, and the mess he had made of everything. By the time I got back into the house, I felt lighter. The weight had been lifted. The storm wasn't just approaching, it had already passed. Nathan would have to answer to everyone now. And I wasn't done. Nathan didn't stay gone long. I had expected him to slink away, defeated and broken, but he wasn't as passive as I thought. No, he had been in survival mode for so long that when the rug was pulled out from under him, he fought like a cornered animal. I knew what he was doing. He was trying to get back into the house. He would come to me with apologies, pleading, begging for forgiveness. But I wasn't falling for it again. This time, I wasn't playing the role of the forgiving wife. I was done with that. He came by the next morning, standing at the front door with his usual hollow look, his hand raised to knock. I could see it in his eyes. He had prepared a script, a series of apologies and promises, but none of it mattered to me anymore. I opened the door. My face was a mask of indifference. What do you want? I asked flatly. He stammered for a second, then blurted out, Chloe. I'm sorry. You have to understand. I was confused. Marissa, she's just a kid. No, I interrupted, cutting him off sharply. You're still lying, Nathan. You're still trying to manipulate me into feeling sorry for you. But it's over. I'm not going to listen to your excuses anymore. He stared at me for a moment, stunned, but quickly recovered. His face twisted with frustration. You can't do this, he said, his voice low. You can't just throw everything away. What about Caleb? What about our family? I looked at him coldly. You threw it all away the second you started this affair. Don't talk to me about family. You destroyed it, Nathan. Not me. His jaw clenched, and I could see the rage flickering in his eyes, but I stood firm. I wasn't backing down. Leave, I said, my voice steely. He opened his mouth to protest but thought better of it. Slowly, he turned and walked away, defeated. I closed the door behind him, but the relief didn't come as quickly as I thought. The storm was still brewing, and I could feel the tension in the air. Marissa was still out there, still waiting to make her move. But I had a plan. By the time Nathan left, the phone calls started. They weren't from him. They were from his business partners, people I had known for years. I had anticipated this. Nathan had always been a networker, using his charm to win people over, to get them to invest in his schemes. And now that his business was crumbling, they were looking for someone to blame. I ignored the first few calls, but by the fourth, I couldn't avoid it any longer. I picked up the phone, my voice cool and controlled. "Chloe, is Nathan there?" A voice on the other end asked. It was Gary, one of his closest colleagues. "No," I said, my tone sharp. "And I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to stop contacting me. Nathan is no longer a part of this family. He's out of my life." There was a pause on the line. Gary seemed taken aback, but then I heard the shuffle of papers, and he cleared his throat. "Look, Chloe, we've always been friendly, right? You know how Nathan is. He's been having some personal issues lately, but that's no reason to." "I'm sorry," I interrupted, my voice firm, "but I don't care about Nathan's issues anymore. He's been lying to all of you. And now, his problems are your problems." The next few minutes were filled with a series of desperate pleads from Gary, but I remained steadfast. "It's over. Gary. I've already made arrangements to handle things legally, and trust me, you don't want to get involved with him anymore." That was the moment it all began to fall apart. The word spread fast, about Nathan's deceit, about the affair, about his financial mismanagement. The partners started pulling out of deals. Investors started demanding answers. By the time the morning was over, Nathan's empire was crumbling. And then, it wasn't just business that he lost. The phone rang again, this time from one of his close friends, another businessman who had vouched for him in the past. "Chloe. Listen. We know about the affair. But this is going to hurt everyone, okay? Nathan's been a good guy. He's just having a rough time. We need to handle this quietly." I couldn't help but laugh at that. "You really think I'm going to cover for him after everything he's done?" The silence on the other end of the line spoke volumes. It was a death knell for Nathan. There would be no quiet resolution. There would be no second chances. This was the end. Over the next few days, the fallout was unavoidable. Nathan's business accounts were frozen. Investors pulled out in droves. A few close friends reached out to me, but they, too, started distancing themselves as the truth about Nathan's personal life became more public. Meanwhile, Marissa was nowhere to be found. She hadn't returned to the house. She hadn't contacted me. I knew she was out there, probably talking to her mother, but I couldn't care less. The house felt different now. Lighter. But still, there was a nagging feeling that I wasn't done yet. Nathan may have been gone, but I still had to deal with the mess he left behind. Then, just as I thought things couldn't get worse, an email arrived. It was from Marissa's mother. The message was short and blunt. "Chloe, we know what you're trying to do. You won't win. Marissa is entitled to everything she wants, and we will make sure she gets it. You're nothing compared to her. Just remember, Chloe, she's Nathan's daughter." The threats were clear. But instead of feeling fear or anger, I just felt relief. Because now, I knew exactly how far they were willing to go to try and destroy me. And I also knew how to bring it all crashing down. By now, I had made my peace with the chaos. Nathan's downfall had been swift and decisive, but the aftermath still lingered in the air. It was hard not to feel satisfaction at seeing his business unravel, at watching his world burn to the ground. However, deep inside, I knew the end was still not fully in sight. There was still Marissa to deal with. She was the one constant reminder of Nathan's betrayal, and she was more dangerous than he'd ever been. She wasn't just the 16-year-old girl playing at being a victim. No, she was a weapon. A weapon that, when used by her mother, could potentially ruin me in ways I wasn't prepared to handle. That's when I called my lawyer. I had already consulted with him earlier about separating my assets from Nathan's, but now it was time to go on the offensive. If they thought they could intimidate me into silence, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. We need to make sure Marissa has no claim on anything, I told my lawyer, standing in his office. I had already spent too many sleepless nights worrying about this girl and her manipulative games. It was time to end it. He looked over his notes. You've made the right call, Chloe. She's been living under your roof, and Nathan's behavior has been documented. We can make sure she doesn't have a leg to stand on, especially when it comes to any claims on your property or assets. We talked for the next hour, making sure all the legal aspects were covered, ensuring Caleb's future was safe. My property was protected, and the business was fully separated from Nathan's name. I had already frozen joint accounts and taken out my own insurance policies to protect myself, and now it was time to finish what I had started. By the end of the day, my lawyer had filed a petition, not just for the dissolution of my marriage, but also for full legal custody of Caleb. I wasn't just preparing to end the marriage, I was preparing for war. The email from Marissa's mother had been a challenge. A final, desperate act to intimidate me into backing down. I'd read it twice and laughed, the absurdity of it all hitting me. You're nothing compared to her. The arrogance. The entitlement. It was laughable. But it also confirmed what I had already suspected: Marissa and her mother weren't going to back down quietly. They didn't care about boundaries or respect. They wanted to take everything they thought they were entitled to, and they would destroy anyone in their path to get it. That's when I made the decision. I couldn't just defend myself anymore. I had to strike first. I called a press conference. It was time to take control of the narrative. Nathan's public image had been tarnished, but it wasn't enough. The public needed to understand the depth of the betrayal. I wasn't going to let the man who had lied to me for years walk away unscathed, nor would I let Marissa, the girl who was so desperate for attention, manipulate her way into a position of power. The press conference was set in a neutral, public space. I had arranged everything: the room, the media coverage, and the statements. I was prepared to speak, not just as a woman scorned, but as a mother fighting for her son and the right to protect her future. The day arrived. The room filled with reporters, cameras, and flashing lights. I stood at the front, steady, poised, and calm. I didn't flinch when the reporters began to shout questions at me, trying to provoke a reaction. Chloe, what's the real reason you're divorcing Nathan? Is it because of the affair? Or is there something more? Do you think Marissa is really the problem here? She's just a kid, after all. I smiled, my gaze unwavering. I've spent the last few weeks watching my life fall apart. And it wasn't just because of Nathan's affair. It was because of the lies, the manipulation, and the complete disregard for me as a person. But I'm here to take back control. I'm here to stand up for my son, for my family, and for myself. The reporters fell silent, sensing the shift in tone. This wasn't just about the affair anymore. This was about something bigger. I am here to tell you today that Nathan and Marissa are no longer part of my life. I continued, my voice steady. I will not allow anyone, no matter their age, to threaten my family. I will not allow someone who has disrespected me and used me to manipulate their way into my life. And I certainly will not stand by while people like Marissa and her mother try to tear down everything I've worked for. I let the words hang in the air, letting the reporters digest them. The cameras clicked as the gravity of my words settled in. Nathan is not just an ex-husband, I added, my voice growing sharper. He's someone who lied, who took advantage of my trust, and who thought he could get away with it. But he's wrong. We're done. And Marissa? She has no place here. I won't allow her to use my life as a springboard for her selfish schemes. The reporters flooded me with questions, but I stood tall. This was my moment. I walked out of that press conference with a renewed sense of purpose. I was no longer a victim. I was a fighter. And the truth was out there now. Nathan's phone was bombarded with calls from his business partners, his friends, his colleagues. The media coverage was relentless. Marissa's mother was livid when she saw the headlines. The game had shifted. Now, the world knew exactly what kind of person Nathan was. As I sat back down at my desk later that evening, I smiled. The battle wasn't over. But the war? The war was mine to win. And it was only just beginning. The world can be a strange place after you've fought through something like this. At first, it's all chaos and noise. Your emotions get tangled in the mess. But after you clear out the smoke, you start seeing things clearly again. I had made the decision to stop running from the consequences of Nathan's actions. I refused to sit back any longer, just a passive figure in my own life, as others pushed me to the side. I knew it wasn't just about winning, this was about setting the record straight. The phone calls didn't stop for days. Lawyers, family friends, media outlets, they all wanted a piece of the story. They wanted a scoop, an inside angle. But I wasn't handing anything over. This wasn't for anyone else to consume or gossip about. This was personal, and I wasn't about to allow the narrative to be controlled by anyone but me. Even so, the pressure was mounting. It took a few more days before Nathan and Marissa made their next move. I knew they were cornered now. Nathan's business was falling apart faster than he could salvage it, and Marissa, with her impetuous attitude, was realizing that her calculated games were no longer yielding the results she wanted. The email I received that morning was almost too predictable. Marissa wanted to meet. It was clear to me that she wasn't done playing her game. But I had already won this war, and now it was time to put the final nails in the coffin. I called Nathan first. I didn't waste time with niceties. "You're coming over today," I said when he picked up, my voice sharp. He tried to act surprised, but I knew he wasn't. His tone was defensive, but he still agreed to come. It was as if he still thought there was something left to salvage. Some way he could manipulate me back into the fold. But I wasn't a fool anymore. I knew exactly what was happening. He was desperate. He knew his life was spiraling out of control, and Marissa wasn't enough to save him. When he arrived, I greeted him at the door, standing tall, calm, and poised. Caleb was with me, and he had no idea of the tension that filled the room. Nathan barely acknowledged him. He didn't have the guts to face the child who had been so deeply hurt by his choices. "I know what you're doing, Nathan," I said, sitting across from him. "I've seen your emails. I know you think that if you can convince me to take you back, you'll have some semblance of control again. But you're wrong." He opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. "I've spoken to my lawyer. I've protected myself and Caleb. All the joint accounts are closed. Your business is crumbling, and no matter how much you beg, you're not getting back into this house. You're done." The words hit him hard, like a slap in the face. But I wasn't done yet. "You've hurt me, Nathan. But you've hurt Caleb too. And that's something I'll never forgive." His eyes darkened, the frustration palpable. "What do you want from me, Chloe? You can't just leave me to rot like this. I want you gone. I want Marissa out of my life. You've both taken enough. It's time for me to move forward." I stood up and walked toward the door, signaling that our conversation was over. He lingered, silent, but the fight in his eyes had already faded. There was nothing left for him here. His world was crumbling, and the woman he thought would stay by his side had just completely cut him out. I knew I had to move fast. Marissa was the last piece of the puzzle, and she wasn't going to let go easily. But she didn't know who she was up against. The final confrontation happened in a way I didn't expect. After Nathan left, I knew Marissa wouldn't stay quiet for long. She had no idea how much I knew about her, how far I was willing to go to protect myself and Caleb. The following evening, I received a text from her, "We need to talk. You don't know what I can do to you." It was an empty threat. One that didn't scare me. But I was done playing nice. I arranged to meet her at a public place, a coffee shop in the center of town. She wasn't going to have the power to manipulate me anymore, and this was the final piece of that lesson. When she arrived, she was as smug as ever. The same defiance I'd seen in her when she first entered my home. But this time, I wasn't the woman who allowed myself to be intimidated. I was something else entirely. She sat across from me, her arms crossed. She was playing her usual game, trying to appear stronger than she was. "You think you can just throw me out of your life like this?" She sneered. "You think you can take everything from me?" I didn't flinch. "I'm not taking anything from you, Marissa. I'm just taking back what you stole from me." "You don't know what I can do," she spat. "I can ruin everything for you. Nathan will always have me. You'll be left with nothing." I couldn't stop the smile from creeping onto my face. It wasn't a smile of triumph. It was something deeper. "You've been played, Marissa. You and your mother both. Nathan doesn't care about you. And neither do I." Her face flushed with anger. "You think you can make me leave? You think you can just get rid of me?" "Yes. I do." I looked her straight in the eyes. "I've already won, Marissa. I've already won everything you could ever take from me." It was a calculated risk, meeting her alone. But it worked. The anger on her face faltered, replaced by uncertainty. She had no power here anymore. Her manipulations had failed. "You think you're done with me?" she said, trying one last time. "You won't get away with this." I shrugged. "You'll be forgotten soon enough, forgotten soon enough. Marissa. Just like your father." She stared at me for a moment, trying to find any way to counter what I'd said. But she couldn't. With one last glare, she stood up and stormed out of the cafe, her words empty threats that held no weight anymore. I had stripped her of her power. When I returned home, it was quiet and peaceful. Caleb was playing in the other room, unaware of the battle that had just unfolded. As I sat down at the table, peacefully,